All right, well, welcome to my 3D printing room. This is sort of my makeshift 3D printing room. I was set up in another room, but I got booted out, so I'm going to make do with what I got here, which is pretty nice anyway. These are my three 3D printers. They are all FDM printers, or fused deposition modeling. Basically, they take a spool of plastic like this, they melt it, and they lay it down in little lines, one on top of another, and that's what makes the model or whatever you're trying to make 3D printing. And that's how they work basically. Sort of like welding. If you're familiar with welding, it just lays one layer on top of another, or sort of like a hot glue gun, and it melts it in there and it lays it out there. So we'll take a look at some of the terms and the settings for what makes these work. So basically I have two different styles or technologies of FDM printing right here. The one on the left is an XY core printer. So basically the print bed, or the bed that the part stays on, notice how it stays still, and the print head there is what moves around. So that's one way to do it. And another way over here, this one is a movable bed. And as you can see, the bed moves for that other access there. All right, here's a top view of this one that I'm printing here. As you can see, the middle of it's not solid. This is to save money on material and also time on printing. And it's not necessary in a lot of cases to print them solid. That's what's called infill. And there's a percentage you can set on the infill of how much plastic you want to put in the middle. And also the pattern itself is a setting you can choose in what's called the slicer, which is the program that puts all this together in a language the printer can understand. So that's the infill design there in the middle. And then the outside are what are called the walls. And that's just that solid pattern that you see there on the outside. So depending on what you're making as far as frag racks or things that go into your reef tank, the infill is something of importance, because if you want it to sink, you're going to want to print it in 100% infill, which is what I do with these. So that basically means the whole thing's made out of plastic and there's no air design in that whatsoever. There's no trapped air. However, on these magnetic frag racks, you don't have to necessarily have them solid, because you want them to have some buoyancy. You want the frame to be light, nice and sturdy still, but you want it to be lighter so that way it can hold things, because I don't have the holder printed for this one yet, but when it's held against the glass, you don't want a lot of weight pulling it away from the other magnets on the opposite end. So with these, you can print a lighter infill. I usually go with like 25 to 30% on these, and then ones that I want to sink, I'll put 100% infill. And here are my filament racks. On the left, I have what's called PETG. I'll put what that actually stands for here on the screen. I don't remember them all. And on the right is PLA. I do think that one's polylactic acid. And for reefing, you generally want to stick with things that are PETG. There is a new material that came out. It's called PCTG. PCTG? I haven't tried that one yet. So I use PETG. And this one is more robust for a little bit higher temperatures than PLA as well. PLA is good for stuff that's dry and in lower temperatures. Stuff you might hang on the wall or toys or something like that. For reefing, something that's going to get wet, you generally don't want to use PLA. You want to use PETG. The reason why these are all wrapped up in bags and have desiccant in them is to keep moisture out, because when you print, it will get stringy and gooey if it's all wet, so you want to keep them as dry as possible. And I highly recommend getting a filament dryer. It's worth every penny. So this is my filament dryer. I like this one because it holds 4 spools. And I can also make little desiccant baskets like this and dry out my desiccant, because some desiccant is reusable and you can recharge it just by drying it. So that's why I like this, and I highly recommend getting a dryer. I started off using my wife's oven because it does go low enough. Basically for PETG, you want to go around 150 degrees Fahrenheit. So I would kind of take up her oven space. So I decided, you know what, I should get a filament dryer, and I'm not going back. This thing's awesome. I love it, and I highly recommend it. Other filaments that I use is called TPU. This one is a softer material. It's not really good for reef tanks, but you can put it on things that are like tools for reef tanks, and it'll give it a softer handle if you wish to do that. But I like to print with TPU as well, and there's a certain printer that I use just for that. So you can see this rack right here. It's got the nice drawers. This isn't my design, but I purchased this design and I printed it out, and I printed it out in what's called ASA filament. And that's basically like ABS. It's a nice sturdy plastic. It can be used outside. And I just wanted that basically for strength. And I went with that because this printer right here, since it's a nice enclosed printer, it can print ASA very well, because ASA needs to be fully enclosed and kept warm the whole time it's printing. Otherwise, it can crack. So this thing right here is called an AMS by Bambulab. There's many different versions of it now. Basically, it's for multicolor printing. It has 4 different spool slots. I'm only using 3 right now. And they combine all into one into the tube here. And it basically just poops out one color. As you can see here, that's called filament poop. And it'll purge out the colors one by one when it wants to go change colors. So that's what that's for, is for multicolor printing. And it's not necessary at all. But once you get into 3D printing, you're probably going to want to do multicolor. So if that's something you think you're going to be interested in right away, I suggest getting some kind of material sorter like this for multicolor. But if not, this is what I started off with right here. As you can see, you just hang one color spool and you're just printing one color. And that's how I learned about 3D printing on this 3D printer right here. This one I can adjust all the settings on, whereas these ones over here, there's only certain settings I can adjust, and a lot of it's sort of locked down and it's automatic, which is nice if you just want to hit a button and print. But I like to tweak things every once in a while, so that's why I like this printer. And this one works very well for TPU because it's a nice open air design, and I can just hook it right there on that filament hanger there, and it'll just print for me. And then I can just take it, bag it up, and put it away. So this is what's called a build plate. This one has a cool design on it, like a 3D effect plate. And that's what the material sticks to when it's printing. So it's important to have the right temperature and to make sure that these are nice and clean before you start printing. So that's why I have this alcohol here. I get some paper towel and I'll wipe these down after I scrape off the old plastic that was on there. The way you remove a model is when it's done, you basically just flex the plate and it'll pop off after it's cooled off. All right, now this model is cooled off. Just take my plate, give it a flex in a couple different directions. Sometimes you got to pop it the other way and it comes off. And then what I do is you can take, also if you have a heat gun, you can use that. I take a little butane torch, and sometimes there's little strings in there, and that's normal. So you just use your torch and that'll shrink them strings up, and then they can be easily removed. Also, sometimes you get on the bottom, see that white haze? You just take your torch or your heat gun and quickly run it across there, and it'll remove that as well. If you leave this on here too long, it will start melting it, obviously, and it'll ruin the print, and you'll have to reprint it. So you got to be kind of quick, not too quick, so don't do anything. You'll figure it out if you try this. I just recommend exercising caution because you can ruin your print, and I've done it plenty of times. Just like that. These are some of the tools that I use. Here's a caliper. I use this for measuring things when I'm designing. I'll just keep tweaking designs and printing them out and trying them out until I finally get something that fits. This is a little flush cutter. This will nip little strings or little pieces. These are very handy to have, and you'll probably end up getting these with your printer. If not, I highly recommend getting a pair of these. So here's a nice little cup caddy for my specimen cups when I sell at shows. My wife actually came up with this idea, and it was super easy to make. And that way you can just plunk it right into your tank, and all 4 cups will just float, and it'll acclimate the temperature. And it's also handy just to carry around the show too. So thank you, Mrs. Reefer Matt, for that. That was an awesome idea. All right, so now I'm going to take out my drawer. Let's see which one this is. I believe this is the left side. Awesome. Perfect fit. And it's got the notch that I want. So I'm going to reprint this part in green. So that way it kind of gives it a decorative effect. And I also got to put the notch in this too. There, I just removed all the supports off of this model. Sorry, I can't tell you what it is, but I know there's one person out there who knows what it is, and he's probably laughing right now looking at this. All right, so if you don't own a 3D printer yet, but you're interested, know that they're not that expensive. The sky's the limit, sort of like reefing if you're in the reef tanks too. This particular one here, I paid like 250 bucks 2 years ago. So you can probably get them on sale for 200 bucks. This one I learned a lot because you can adjust all the settings on it. It is just limited though because it can only print one color automatically at a time. You can do multicolor, but you have to adjust it all manually. But it's a great printer to start off on, so it's something to think about. This one over here is a mid-grade printer, but it's by a good company, Bambulab. And this one was about double the other one. I think I paid $450 for this. And I also upgraded it later to this AMS here. It comes with a different one, but they are upgradable for different things. Also, all the stuff you can put on them. This is for a review that we'll do later. But there's a lot of different things you can put on these. That's not stock. That didn't come with it. And then another one, my X1. This is a $1,000 printer on sale. They're usually about 1,200 bucks. And then I modified it by printing this shelf out here. And I also bought an AMS2 for it. So the sky's the limit like everything else with 3D printing, but it's not necessary to start off with the expensive printer if you just want to learn about it and see if you like it. You can go with something like this. The bed slingers are cool. Or something like the Creality over here. So I really recommend a 3D printer to all reefers because, you know, if you like tinkering with a reef tank, you're going to love tinkering with a 3D printer. But we all have personal choices too. So maybe, maybe not, but I highly recommend it. Well, that'll do it for this video. I'm Reefer Matt. Thank you for watching and happy printing.